back on record. The time is 3:45 p.m.
How does THR Property Management and/or Invitation Homes Realty LLC ensure that outside contractors have the requisite knowledge, skill, and certification to perform maintenance and repairs at properties that are managed by THR Property Management?
That's all handled through our national procurement team. We have a vendor onboarding process that's facilitated if it's on the rehab and turn side of the business with our national procurement team, and then on the maintenance side of the business with Lesson. So they're compliance standards as it relates to licenses and that sort of thing.
How would I find out what those standards are?
We have vendor onboarding guides that we provide, and that information is all, stored in our systems. Our national procurement team has all those details. And on the maintenance side, part of that's probably outlined in the master services agreement, I would think.
In terms of the, so it looked like there was like a pre-negotiated amount for different services that are offered. How were those, excuse me, how were those prices negotiated?
Are you speaking specifically with maintenance services through Lesson?
Yes.
That's negotiated with our executive team and Lesson, likely their executive team. That's part of the contract.
Is there any incentives for Lesson to perform services at lesser amounts? Or is there like any sort of bonus if maintenance or expenses are kept to a certain threshold or anything like that?
I believe there are tiers established with the contract based on volume and performance standards. I don't know the specifics on that. Honestly, it's adjusted and been changed as contracts have been updated over the years.
Does THR Property charge any fees for management, maintenance, or administration as it applies to the rented premises?
Maintenance fees specifically?
Yes, sir.
We would charge fees if there are items that are repaired or replaced identified as resident responsibility, or if residents miss appointments, we might charge trip fees.
Sure, but does THR Property Management charge anything to the owner or to Invitation Homes Realty or to Invitation Homes Incorporated for any management services that are being performed? No,
not that I'm aware of. There's no management fees with the owned entities.
If there's no fees that are earned, how does THR Property Management exist as a going concern?
THR Property Management is the management entity for all of the ownership entities that the publicly traded REIT, Invitation Homes, that's all under the umbrella of the REIT. And so the affiliation with Invitation Homes, there are no management fees that are charged as part of that I'm aware of.
Is THR Property Management a wholly owned subsidiary of Invitation Homes Incorporated?
THR, I'll go through, and I think we kind of hit on the structure at the very beginning, and I'm going to give you the structure to the best of my knowledge, is the publicly traded REIT, and I'm going to go top to bottom, is Invitation Homes Inc. Okay, and we do business through Invitation Homes Operating Partnership, and then a subsidiary of that is THR Property Management, which operates as the management entity, along with Invitation Homes Realty, which is the brokerage portion of the management company, and then all of the individual ownership entities, in this case 2018 3 IH Bar, are operated. Those are the ownership entities that THR Property Management operates.
Is, if I was like looking at, I guess, as a visual, is THR Property above Invitation Homes Realty LLC?
I would say those two are concurrent. Yeah, no, this is more of a lateral relationship.
Understood. And I'm on 36, does THR Property bear any financial responsibility for repairs, materials, or upkeep of the residential premises?
They manage, THR Property Management manages the financial aspects. The ownership entities actually bear the financial burden.
I'm sorry, who bears the financial burden?
The ownership entities,
Oh. Okay. So 37, if a renter, well, strike that. Who procures the homeowner's insurance for the leased residential premises? And I'm not talking about like the renter insurance, but like the other, like who secures that?
The homeowner's insurance policies, that's all run through our corporate tax and legal team.
But is that a function of THR Property Management? Is that a function of 2018 IH Borrower LP? Is that a function of Invitation Homes Realty? Like who actually does that?
Associates perform the management activities, and so whether it's corporate or market associates, it's under the THR Property Management umbrella.
And then when there are claims that are made to the insurers, how are those claims reported, and who are they reported by?
Our risk management team is the team that really facilitates any of those insurance claims. And so any insurance-related damage, you could use a natural disaster as an example. There are flags in our system that designate that. Now, if it's resident-specific damage as part of I know we're talking homeowner's insurance policy versus renter's insurance policy, but if it's a resident-related damage, that's handled separately.
Is that risk management department for claims, is that under THR Property, or is that under a different entity, or is that directly under Invitation Homes Incorporated?
Corporate associates or market associates are under the property management umbrella.
So that would be THR Property?
Property management.
In terms of the insurance policies that cover claims, who are the insurance policies through?
We have multiple entities that insurance policies are through. It's become more and more difficult to procure those policies, especially in Florida, over the course of the last several years. And once again, that's all facilitated through our corporate tax team and risk management.
Sure. And so for this property that we're here for today, the 3828 Trenton Lane property, what are the insurances in place for that property for a loss such as this one?
I believe we have those documents that were provided. I don't know all the detailed coverages of the insurance policies. Once again, that's something that, quite frankly, our risk management team facilitates, and so I don't always have all those details.
Okay, are you prepared today to talk about the insurance policies and what are the applicable limits for each layer of insurance that would have applied to this loss?
I can talk generally about the documents that are provided and go through those documents. The limits are identified in the documentation that's provided, I believe.
Okay. Do you have those with you? I didn't print those out.
I would imagine they were produced earlier on.
You don't know though, like, do you know who the first layer of insurance is through and what the limits are?
Once again, I'm sort of hands off when it comes to that, and that's why, when an incident of this nature occurs, we immediately report through our risk management team, and they facilitate filing the incident and the claim where needed.
How much liability insurance is there for this claim?
I don't know.
Who would know that?
Kimberly Reynolds would know.
He also said you could look at the documents and he could talk about what the documents say.
What did you do to prepare for area of inquiry number 39 as it pertains to 39 as it pertains to all insurance policies applicable to leased residential premises?
I reviewed the insurance policies in the system that were provided.
Okay, so there's, do you remember seeing insurance policy for Chubbs?
Maybe.
Do you know at least what the first layer of insurance is?
Once again, I reviewed the electronic file and all the documentation when it came to insurance. My expectation was if we had specific questions, we would print out the documents and go through them as we have with the exhibits here.
Is there a self-insured retention, SIR?
I don't have all that detail memorized, unfortunately.
And I'm not asking for the amount, I'm just asking if there's an SIR.
Explain that.
Self-insured retention. It's like a deductible, it's just a fancy
Yeah.
word for a deductible.
I'm sure there is.
Do you know how much the deductible is?
I don't know the details.
Okay. Did you bring a computer with you to look at any of the documents, such as the policy or any of that?
I don't have a computer with me.
Okay, so we're taking a break in a little bit, and I'll come back to it. I'll ask you some more questions,
Okay.
but I do have it on my computer. It's
Of
probably
course.
like 1,000 pages, so I didn't
Yeah.
print it out.
Of course.
I wanted to save a tree, but we'll see what you know about it. Do you know which entity actually procured the insurance for the leased residential premises?
Typically, that would be our property management team, THR Property Management, through our central legal and risk management team.
Who are the named insureds on the policies?
I believe the named insurers would be the ownership entity and the property management entity. I'm not certain though.
Would you have to look at the policy to see?
Yeah,
Do you know if Invitation Homes Realty is a named insured on the policy?
I don't know.
Does THR Property control or assist in the claims handling process for losses or perils? Let's say from January 2020 through the date of the fire?
We certainly partner with our corporate legal and risk management team and, follow any guidance and instruction and cooperate with them as needed.
Can you explain what the responsibilities of the tenant are as it pertains to smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and inspections and repairs for smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors for the leased premises?
Yeah, those responsibilities are outlined in the lease agreement. Generally, they're responsible for replacing smoke detector batteries and reporting any issues with the equipment.
Would a tenant be responsible to purchase a carbon monoxide detector and install it themselves?
I don't believe that's outlined in the lease agreement specifically.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you, so.
I don't think so.
Have we talked about all of the written policies and procedures as it pertains to installation, inspection, testing, and replacement of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors from the time that Mr. Rhodes and his roommate rented the premises through the date of the fire?
I believe so.
In 45, we've talked about are you familiar with the building codes and compliance codes and municipal codes that would govern the leased premises as it pertains to smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors?
I'm not an expert with building codes. However, I will say that I'm familiar with our policy, which was constructed to align with, requirements, local requirements, state requirements.
If your policy, if there was a state or municipal policy that was different than a policy, whether that be written or oral, for THR property management and/or Invitation Homes Realty, would those companies follow whatever the state or municipal regulations would be?
Our responsibility and goal, if we're made aware of any changes to local guidance that doesn't align with our policy, would be to report that to our national team so that we can update our policy.
Okay. But in terms of an action plan, would you, I understand that you would notify corporate, but would you comply with all applicable local codes, local and state codes?
Of course, we want to apply with all local and state codes.
In terms of the turns that were done that we discussed, is there, I didn't see any photographs in those turns. Are there photographs that would have been taken to prove that that work had been performed?
It's hard to take pictures of some of the work that's listed in a bid or a PTL. And so where we can document and take photos, we always try to, of course, document the condition when we do the scope and when we do the turn. And then now we would take pictures, of sign off, and we have better technology to be able to document that now. And so you might not have as many completion photos of all of the itemized things on a scope just because you can't take pictures of everything, but we try to document the best we can. That's the goal.
Were there any photos that were taken in any of the turns for the leased residential premises that we do not have or that we have not reviewed during this deposition, but that exists?
There may be after rehab photos of return records. You know, just general photos around the house. There are probably, you know, there are marketing photos, there are all sorts of photos of every home and every record out there. So I think you could draw the conclusion there may be photos out there.
How can I get those photos?
I think those photos are all in our system of record up to, you know, I would say starting a certain date, depending on the platform you're looking at, whether it's, you know, Salesforce or, you know, Lesson. But each rehab record would have corresponding rehab complete photos.
Are there any other systems other than Salesforce or Lesson that would have photographs?
No, most of the photos would be through either Salesforce or Lesson, because there's an API with Blueprint into Salesforce where we document and store photos.
Do you know why, you as corporate representative, do you know why the smoke detectors were not replaced in the leased residential premises in any of the prior turns that were performed on the property?
Do I know why they weren't replaced?
Yes.
No, I have basically everything that's documented is, I don't know why specifically. I mean, we're aligning with our policy and the procedures in place at the time, but my expectation would be a determination would be made by the representative out at the home on whether a replacement was needed, and if, you know, we didn't determine that it was needed, you know, there's no way for me to know why it wasn't replaced unless it was actually needed. Otherwise, my expectation would be that it wasn't needed.
Okay, but you would agree that if a smoke detector is 10 years old or older, then it should be replaced?
Check the form.
Under our current policy, the smoke detector should be replaced if it's 10 years in a rehab return, 10 years old.
Okay. You do understand, though, that, like, it's, here, I'll show you some things. Like, you understand that, and I'll attach this as plaintiff's exhibit.
32?
32.
32, 33. 33.
You understand that the government, in particular the National Fire Protection Agency, as well as other governmental programs, have had campaigns, information campaigns, documenting that fire alarms need to be replaced, and these campaigns have been ongoing for decades.
Check the form.
Or did Invitation Homes just figure out in 2022, when it revised its policy, that smoke detectors need to be replaced every 10 years?
Check the form.
I don't know, I'm only going by our goal to comply with local ordinances and laws based on what we know and what our policy in place is. So I've never seen this, if you're asking me.
Was your policy prior to 2022 not to replace smoke detectors that were older than 10 years old?
We didn't have a policy that said not to replace smoke detectors. Our process and our guidelines that we followed were to replace if we identified the equipment, whether it's smoke detectors or any other equipment, is defective and needs to be replaced.
Okay, so that would be a reactive policy, right? You would find a defect, and if there's a defect, then you would replace it.
Check the form.
Depends on how you're defining reactive or proactive. As we outlined in the ProCare policy, that was a proactive visit. When we're in a home to do either a scope or a maintenance visit, we would, inspect or identify what work needed to be done. You could call it reactive because we identify it, but I think there's some sort of proactive measure that has to take place to complete that identification.
You're aware that the UL underwriters only underwrite the smoke alarm for 10 years, and so the manufacturer also recommends that a smoke detector be replaced every 10 years.
Check the form. Foundation.
I've learned a lot today about smoke detectors and I know you have some documentation over there. I see a book, and this is information that I've seen, and so yeah, I'm aware of what you're telling me now, but I'm not an expert when it comes to this, and so I have more of a general awareness of laws and regulations and what our policies are.
And I appreciate that, but my question is, if a smoke detector is installed or exists in a property that you manage or control, and the manufacturer requires that the smoke detector be replaced every 10 years, wouldn't it be your policy that the smoke detector is replaced in accordance with the manufacturer guideline?
Check the form.
We have a policy in place to comply with the guidelines. The April 2022 policy is outlined. I would say all of our teams, through their inspections and partnering with vendors and GCs, we want to make sure every home is clean, safe, functional, and comply with any guidelines that are out there.
Okay, would that include the manufacturer's guidelines for a product?
I think that our policy took into account guidelines of manufacturers and the lifespan of smoke detectors, and that's why we implemented the 10-year standard as a formal policy.
Sure, but I'm talking about prior to 2022. So this property was turned in 2021, right? So what I'm concerned about is the policy that was in place before Mr. Rhodes
Of course.
and his co-tenant took possession.
Of course.
So it's a simple question. I just want to know, and that's fine. If there's no policy, and all the policy was, hey, we push the button and we don't look at the dates, and if it's broke, then we're fixed it, but we're not concerned about the expiration date, that's fine if that's the policy. But I want to know if that's the policy, or if the policy is, no, our policy would be we would follow the recommendations of the UL underwriters, which would be when it's on the smoke detector that they need to be replaced every 10 years, that we would want it changed in accordance with that policy for the smoke detector, for the manufacturer of the smoke detector,
Check the form.
or the UL underwriter. So I just want to know which it is.
Check the form.
Regardless of our current policy, I believe that our teams, prior to the policy being instituted, would complete and take care of any work that needed to be taken care of, whether it's smoke detectors that aren't functioning properly, that could be just the batteries, that could be any other mechanical work that needs to be done in the home. So even in the absence of a formal policy, it's not necessarily saying that our team wouldn't act appropriately to replace equipment or anything that needed to be replaced.
Okay, so in this case, we know, excuse me, we know that at the time of the fire, the smoke detectors were 19 years old, except for the one that was replaced in the vaulted ceiling, okay? This is according to your own expert, Christian Freza, and his inspection. Is it the policy, when that turn was done in 2021, that because the smoke detector was out of date by a considerable amount of time, was it the policy of Invitation Homes Realty or any of the entities that we've mentioned, THR Property Management, to replace a smoke detector that is expired?
In the absence of a formal policy, because that was not we did not have a formal policy at the move-in when Mr. Rhodes moved into the home in 2021. And so regardless of the formal policy, you know, our general guidance is to evaluate and make a determination on equipment that needed to be replaced. And I believe firmly that our team out on the ground completing a PTL and a scope, had they known that a smoke detector was 19 years old, they undoubtedly would have replaced it.
You would expect them to replace it if they knew.
Check the form.
Of course, you would want them to replace a 19-year-old smoke detector.
Why would you want them to replace a 19-year-old smoke detector?
For all the reasons that we've mentioned today with the 10-year lifespan of a smoke detector, and we can second guess and, you know, question, you know, what happened. And I think we would all agree we'd probably handle things differently. But, you know, look, I think that our team was at the time very diligent in completing the work that needed to be done based on many different team members' evaluation of, you know, what they observed at the home and what was reported at the time by Mr. Rhodes and his co-tenant.
So you agree that the work that was performed by the Invitation Homes that's listed as IH on July 19th, 2022, when they went back to replace that smoke detector on the vaulted ceiling, that work was done in a workmanlike manner?
I have nothing to tell me otherwise. I believe that, you know, he replaced the smoke detector as he saw fit based on his evaluation and inspection of the property at the time.
Did he determine whether the other smoke detectors would be able to safely interconnect with the new detector that he installed?
I don't have that information.
Was there any sort of information that you gleaned or that you learned from review of those records, whether he looked at the manufacturer recommendations for that kiddie smoke alarm prior to installation?
I don't have anything documented to verify those specifics outside of what is in the troubleshooting and check-in and check-out questions, which we reviewed earlier.
Do you think the reason why the smoke detectors were not replaced during any of the turns that we've discussed, and that only batteries were replaced is because that was a cheaper option.
I don't think so.
Would you agree that a battery is a lot cheaper than replacing a smoke detector?
I do. Yeah, a battery is cheaper than replacing a smoke detector, but I don't think that's the driver for why the smoke detector wasn't replaced if it needed to be replaced.
Would you agree that, cutting some corners as it pertains to smoke detectors, just putting in a new battery as opposed to just replacing the smoke detector, would lead to more corporate profit?
I believe our goal is to deliver a clean, safe, functional product, and when safety is involved, we don't cut corners, as you termed it. Nobody would knowingly cut corners for anything that's, intended to create safeguards in homes.
How was THR Property Management informed of the fire and death of Tyler Rhodes?
I believe that Ms. Pemberton was the individual that actually called in the work order after she discovered Mr. Rhodes on December 16th.
Now, in circumstances that are more serious, such as someone dies or a fire, is there a way to elevate the work order to like a higher level, like a superintendent, or to someone like James Staples, who supervises maintenance and repairs?
Absolutely. Anytime there's somebody deceased, death involved, that's something that market leadership wants to know about immediately. And so, from a genuine care perspective, we want to make sure to notify our executive team. We want to make sure to reach out to the resident, any emergency contacts. In this case, it was reported, and I believe, either Lesson or our team that saw the work order come in first would have likely notified us, in this case, James, or potentially like we have the ability, Lesson has the ability to adjust priority level as needed.
And in my deposition with Mr. Staples, he had mentioned that Ms. Texon was involved fairly early on. Would have she been notified too if there's in case where there's a death or a fire?
Typically our legal, Ms. Texon in this case, and risk management, which would be Kimberly Reynolds and Christy McPherson, that team would be involved. We would notify them because immediately when this sort of incident happens, we want to make sure there's an incident, there's documentation, and then we defer to risk management on next steps.
And why do you want to do that? Is that due to the potential of a claim being made or pending litigation?
Yeah, I think that the way our workflow is constructed and how we communicate these incidents, that's the structure that we have in place, and it could have to do with, documentation, detailed documentation and reporting of potential claims.
In this case, who hired Christian Freza to do his investigation?
I believe Kimberly Reynolds, our risk management team.
Were you, strike that. So I'm on 48. I think we talked about all the inspections for which we have records. 49, we talked about. 50, we just talked about. Other than having James Staples present and another employee shortly after the fire and hiring Christian Fraser, are you aware of any other investigators that went to the scene and investigated the fire or the stove or any of the smoke detectors? And I'm not including Paul Snyder because he was a fire marshal, but obviously we know of him.
Of course, I'm not aware of anyone other than Christian Fraser or the fire department or police department.
Okay, and in terms of who was present during the inspection of the during Christian Fraser's inspection, I took the deposition of James Staples. He testified that he was present, but he testified also that he didn't really stay there. He kind of went outside. But other than him, are you aware of anyone else who was present at the inspection with Christian Fraser?
No.
I have a very quick housekeeping matter.
Okay.
If you've parked in the building and need validation, that young lady is going to leave promptly at 5.
Okay.
So you would need to do it before then. She probably needs 10-minute notice.
Can I just give her to her and then come back in?
We could just take a break right now. We can take a short break and just do it.
Going off the record, the time is 4:26 PM. We're back on record, the time is 4:31 PM.
Who's in charge of evidence preservation?
If that's required, that's all facilitated through our risk management team. And in this case, we hired Christian Fraser, so that would have all been facilitated through our risk management team.
Is there a policy as it pertains to evidence preservation when there's a fatality caused by a fire?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was there a policy, whether it was a written policy or a oral policy about carbon monoxide detectors and whether they should be in homes from, let's say, January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2023, in houses that have an attached garage?
Yes, and that's outlined in our smoke and carbon monoxide policy.
What was the policy of Invitation Homes as it pertains to fire extinguishers? Did Invitation Homes provide fire extinguishers in single-family dwellings?
We do not provide fire extinguishers in the lease agreement. I believe that's outlined as resident responsibility.
Does Invitation Homes require the tenant to purchase an extinguisher, a fire extinguisher, and for that to be located on the premises?
We don't require it. It's outlined as resident responsibility in the lease agreement, I believe. And it's not something that we do as part of our rehab intern process.
Did Invitation Homes perform any sort of root cause analysis or investigation for the fire that occurred at the leased residential premises?
I believe that's why our risk management team hired Mr. Fraser to conduct that analysis.
Do you have any opinion as that you intend to give at trial as it pertains to who is responsible or who is at fault for the death of Tyler Rhodes?
Who specifically is responsible? Do I have an opinion on
Yes.
that? No, I think, there's likely shared responsibility. I don't really, it was an accidental cooking fire, and I think unfortunately accidents happen, and I wouldn't assess any individual blame on any one person personally.
Do you believe that Lesson did anything wrong as it pertains to the either the cause of the fire or the smoke detectors or anything like that?
I don't have any documentation to say that Lesson, did anything specifically wrong. And we've reviewed the work order history. Depends on what your definition of wrong is, but there's nothing that I can tell detailed based on the information we've reviewed.
So, do you intend to testify at trial that Lesson is responsible for the death of Tyler Rhodes?
Do I intend that today? No.
Well, this is my only opportunity
Yeah,
to take your deposition prior to trial.
I don't,
so,
yeah.
do you?
I don't, like I said earlier, I believe everybody has a part in making sure that, work is reported that needs to be done, complying with the standards in place and adhering to time frames and performance managing vendors. And so to specifically, point this at any one individual, I don't really think that's my space. I honestly, we'll let the facts speak for that.
If it was determined that the smoke detectors were not operational at the time of the fire, do you believe that Invitation Homes management, THR property management, or Invitation Homes Realty, or 2018 2018-3 IH Borrower LP has some responsibility?
Check the form.
Once again, I don't think that's the case. I think there's shared responsibility. Our residents, it's outlined in the lease agreement that they have an obligation to, report, any deficiencies, report work that needs to be done, change batteries. We also, as part of our ProCare policy, inspect smoke detectors as part of that program. And if we identify that there's work that needs to be done, we'll complete the work. And so I think, once again, there's shared responsibility to make sure that the lease agreement and the terms of the lease agreement are met and that our policies and procedures are executed.
Does Invitation Homes Realty and/or THR Property Management and/or 2018-3 IH Borrower have a responsibility to make sure that it provides working smoke detectors to its tenants?
I believe our responsibility is to create a clean, safe, functional product, and part of that is safeguards for smoke detectors, and that's why we have a policy that's in place today.
And would that policy include providing working smoke detectors?
Of course of course part of the policy is that the smoke detectors are working and functional.
Are there any other third parties that you believe are responsible for the death of Tyler Rhodes?
I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware of.
Do carbon monoxide detectors save lives?
Check the form.
I think the intention of a smoke or a carbon monoxide detector is to create safeguards which minimize the risk, but it is safety equipment. And so does it save lives directly? It's up to all the parties involved, as we've discussed, resident, our teams that are inspecting third-party vendors to make sure that the equipment is in the condition it needs to be in. So I know that's a long-winded way of answering if it saves lives, but I would think the goal of a smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector would be to help contribute to that safeguard.
Was there a carbon monoxide detector at 3828 Trenton Lane at the time of the fire involved in the death of my client, Mr. Tyler Rhodes?
Objection, ask and answered, you can answer.
I don't know.
Were you aware that the cause of death listed for Tyler Rhodes was carbon monoxide poisoning?
Yes.
In terms of the investigation that Christian Fraser performed, have you given all those documents that were received by Invitation Homes to your counsel, like his entire file?
I believe so.
You're talking about Christian's file or the documents that were provided to Christian?
So the documents that Christian Fraser as part of his file, like his photographs and other documents that he produced as part of his investigation, have you given all of those documents to your counsel?
I believe everything that was produced by Christian Fraser has been provided to our counsel.
During the time of the tenancy of Tyler Rhodes, if a carbon monoxide detector would have been furnished, and I know you said that you're not sure if there was one or wasn't one, but who would have been responsible for furnishing the carbon monoxide detector? Would have that been? What is the process for that during that time period? Would have that been employee at Invitation Homes? Would have that been Pleasant, or how would have that been managed?
Typically, in the rehab and turn processes, outlined in the policy, we would have made the decision on the equipment that needed to be completed. But specifically, carbon monoxide detectors, if it's in the rehab and turn side of the business, that may be an item that's included on the scope, and a general contractor, regardless of time frame, any of the items in the scope, they would be responsible for furnishing smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. That's outlined in the scope of work. Now, if it's on the occupied maintenance side, as referenced and as we went over earlier with the ProCare visit by an in-house maintenance tech, if we determine there are issues with any equipment, like we have, work that in-house maintenance techs can complete.
Other than Kimberly Reynolds, who else is on the risk management team for operations in the Tampa area, let's say in 2023 when the fire occurred?
Objection.
I believe that Christy McPherson is on the risk management team, and it's a legal and risk management team, essentially the same team. And so Michelle she's our legal counsel. I don't remember who else is on that team.
Regardless of what policy was in place at the time of strike that, would you say that it's beneficial for a resident to have a carbon monoxide detector?
Check the form and foundation, you can answer.
I think that would be speculation on my part, depending on case by case and conditions of the home as outlined in the policy. I think we developed the policy to align with, what creates, the best environment for the resident.
And if the best environment for a resident included having a carbon monoxide detector, then you would be in favor for that.
Executive form.
I'm in favor of what's outlined in the policy. It's outlined for a reason, and it addresses smoke and carbon monoxide detectors.
Who had final authority over safety compliance at THR Property Management for residential leases in the state of Florida in 2020, 2021, and 2022, and 2023?
I think it's a shared responsibility between national leadership and local leadership and our risk management team.
In terms of the documents that you looked for like Salesforce, did you do that by yourself, or did you ask any help from IT or any other party?
I had help from legal counsel.
In
From
order to help, to help you like search for those documents?
Correct.
In terms of our request for production, so we sent an initial request for production, which was entitled Plaintiff's First Request for Production. Did you help or assist in compiling a response for those records?
My team likely assisted in providing records, and I have assisted with some of the information, and then I would say it's a shared effort between our market team and legal. And when I say legal, our in-house legal team.
Okay, so let me just get the insurance policy. You want me to take a short break, and I'll have to show you the insurance policy on my computer.
Can we go off the record, John?
Yeah, we can go off the record.
Going off the record, the time is 4:47 PM. We're back on record, the time is 4:51 PM.
Okay, in terms of the Schedule A, which is just a bunch of documents that we've requested, did you, prior to your deposition, did you review the documents that were being requested?
I reviewed. My understanding is that the documents requested at the time were provided, and I've reviewed those documents.
Okay, were there any documents, let me ask you this way. Did you actually look at the Schedule A, and in the compilation of the documents in response to Schedule A, did you review those documents?
As I mentioned earlier, I had assistance pulling all the documents that are listed on the Schedule A, and my understanding is that those documents were all provided.
Were there any documents that exist that are responsive to Schedule A, but that you or anyone else at any of the companies, we'll just call them refer to them as invitation home companies, that you chose not to include in the responsive materials that we received for Schedule A?
No, I wouldn't have knowingly excluded any documents requested.
Were there any documents in your search for documents related to particular items that we've discussed during this deposition today that you saw existed in the computer system, but that you chose not to print out or not to produce to your council?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to reserve my right to come back and ask additional questions. I don't know if I'll need to or not. There's just a few documents that I didn't receive, like the master service agreement between Invitation Homes and
Lesson?
Lesson, thank you. And I think there are some other documents that we reference, but other than that, I have no further questions, and I appreciate your time today.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions today. He will read.
This concludes the videotape deposition of Justin Gossett. The time is 4:55 PM.
5 minutes early, I mean, that's great.